How many United Kingdoms do you think fit inside the United States? Take a guess. 10. 20. Whatever number you just landed on, it's probably too small. And that's just the opening move. Stick around and you'll find out why a 2-mile gap in the middle of the Bering Sea can put two neighbors almost a full day apart in time. You'll see exactly where Britain, for all its size, quietly comes out ahead of America. This is USA versus UK, 25 geography facts that even people who've lived in either country tend to get wrong. The United States and the United Kingdom share a language, a tangled history, and a surprising number of geography quirks that most people, even the ones who live there, have never actually heard. One is a continent-sized country stretching from tropical islands to Arctic tundra. The other is a set of rainy, windswept islands you could tuck into a single American state and still have room left over. But size isn't the whole story. Coastlines, mountains, rivers, even the way each country is legally divided up, that's where the smaller country starts pulling off some real surprises. We'll start with the number that inspired this whole video. Fact number 1, the size gap. So, back to that opening question. The United States covers about 9.83 million square kilometers, roughly 3.8 million square miles, making it the third largest country on Earth, behind only Russia and Canada. The United Kingdom covers 243,610 square kilometers. Line the two up, and Britain fits inside the United States around 40 times. 40. That's not an exaggeration for effect, that's the literal geometry. Fact number 2, who lives there? Land is one way to measure a country. People are another, and here the gap closes fast. The United States is home to roughly 342 million people. The UK holds around 69 to 70 million. So America has about 5 times the population, spread across 40 times the land. Do the math and Britain comes out far more crowded, its towns and countryside sit noticeably closer together than the open sprawl you'll find across most of the US. Fact number 3, how far across? Numbers on a page are one thing. Actually driving across each country makes the gap impossible to ignore. Crossing the continental United States coast to coast covers roughly 4,500 kilometers, about 2,800 miles. Days behind the wheel, through a dozen different landscapes. Britain's version of that trip is the famous run from Land's End, in England's southwest, to John O'Groats, at the northern tip of Scotland, just over 1,400 kilometers, or 874 miles, by road. You could drive the length of Great Britain 3 times over and still not finish crossing the US once. Fact number 4, a country in pieces. Both countries also cheat a little on the idea of being one solid landmass. The United States is really 3 separate pieces, the 48 connected states, Alaska up near the Arctic, and Hawaii, a volcanic island chain sitting thousands of kilometers out in the Pacific. The UK has a smaller version of the same split. Great Britain, the island holding England, Scotland, and Wales, is one landmass. Northern Ireland sits on a second island entirely, alongside the Republic of Ireland. Neither map is quite as whole as it looks at first glance. Fact number 5, the border that never ends. That same idea of pieces shows up again at the border. The line between the United States and Canada runs 8,891 kilometers, about 5,525 miles, making it the longest international border on Earth. It crosses the Great Lakes, climbs through the Rockies, and for long stretches runs through wilderness so remote it's never even been fenced. The UK has exactly one land border in the entire country, roughly 500 kilometers separating Northern Ireland from the Republic of Ireland. America's longest border would swallow Britain's only one almost 18 times over. Fact number 6, the highest ground. Borders tell you how a country is drawn on a map. Elevation tells you what it's actually made of. America's tallest peak is Denali, in Alaska, rising 6,190 meters, 20,310 feet, above sea level. It's the highest point not just in the US, but on the entire continent of North America, and measured from base to summit, it actually stands taller than Everest. Britain's answer is Ben Nevis, in the Scottish Highlands, topping out at 1,345 meters, the tallest mountain in the British Isles, and a genuinely tough climb in its own right. But Denali is more than 4.5 times higher. Stack nearly 5 Ben Nevises on top of each other, and you'd still be reaching for the summit. Fact number 7, the lowest ground. Going from the highest point to the lowest tells a very different story. In California's Death Valley, the salt flats of Badwater Basin sink to 86 meters, 282 feet, below sea level, the lowest point in North America, and one of the hottest places on the planet. Britain's lowest point is quieter. Holme Fun, a patch of drained wetland in the English countryside, sits just 2.75 meters below sea level. It got there because Victorian engineers drained a nearby lake, and the peat underneath has been slowly sinking ever since. There's a strange piece of proof still standing on site, a pair of iron posts that were once flush with the ground now rise several meters above it. Fact number 8, the coastline surprise. And this is where Britain's small size becomes misleading. The United States has a coastline of roughly 19,924 kilometers. Since America is about 40 times bigger than the UK, you'd expect its coastline to run 40 times longer too. It doesn't. Measured at high tide, including every inlet and cliff, one commonly cited figure puts Britain's coastline at around 17,820 kilometers, nearly matching a country 40 times its size. The reason comes down to shape, not scale. Britain's coast folds constantly, through locks, fjords, and thousands of small islands, and every twist adds distance that a smoother coastline simply doesn't need. Fact number 9, nations built from islands. The island count follows a similar pattern. The UK is officially made up of well over 6,000 islands, most of them tiny, scattered from Shetland in the north to the Isles of Scilly off England's southwest coast. America has its own scattered collection. Alaska's Aleutian Islands alone stretch for hundreds of miles into the Pacific, curling so far west that the chain technically crosses into the eastern hemisphere. Add Hawaii's volcanic islands and the thousands more off Florida, Washington, and Maine, and a pattern emerges. Both of these, single countries, are, geographically speaking, archipelagos wearing a trench coat. Fact number 10, fire from below. Underneath all that land, the two countries were built very differently. The US has real active volcanic regions, Alaska's Aleutian Arc, the Cascade Range, where Mount St. Helens erupted violently in 1980, and Hawaii's Kilauea, one of the most active volcanoes on the planet. The UK doesn't have a single active volcano today. But it wasn't always that quiet. Around 50 to 60 million years ago, ancient volcanic activity in what's now Northern Ireland cooled into thousands of interlocking hexagonal basalt columns, the landscape known today as the Giant's Causeway. Fact number 11, deserts. One has them, one doesn't. Deserts follow the same divide. The US has real ones, the Mojave, the Sonoran, the Great Basin, vast stretches of sand, cactus, and shimmering heat across the American Southwest. The UK has none. Not a single true desert exists anywhere in the country. Britain's climate is simply too wet and too mild for one to form. The surrounding seas keep the whole island chain damp and temperate year-round. Fact number 12, one climate, every climate. Zoom out from deserts and the climate picture gets even bigger. The United States spans an enormous range, Arctic tundra in northern Alaska, humid subtropical wetlands in Florida, tropical rainforest in Hawaii, and desert heat in Arizona, all inside one country's borders. The UK is overwhelmingly dominated by a temperate maritime climate, shaped by the surrounding Atlantic and North Sea. Conditions do vary regionally. Scotland's highlands run cooler and wetter than southern England, but nothing close to the extremes packed into the US. Fact number 13, the longest rivers. Water tells a related story. The Missouri River, America's longest, runs for roughly 3,767 kilometers, about 2,341 miles, before joining the Mississippi, and together they form one of the longest river systems in the world. Britain's longest river, the Severn, flows for about 354 kilometers, 220 miles, starting in the Welsh Mountains and winding down through England to the Bristol Channel. It's a genuinely historic river. It would still take more than 10 of them laid end to end to match the Missouri alone. Fact number 14, the biggest lakes. Lakes push the comparison further still. The U.S. shares one of the planet's great natural features with Canada, the Great Lakes. Lake Superior alone is the largest freshwater lake in the world by surface area, and together the 5 Great Lakes hold roughly a fifth of the planet's fresh surface water. The UK's biggest lake, Loch Ness in Northern Ireland, covers around 388 square kilometers. Impressive by British standards, and it would still fit inside Lake Superior more than 200 times over. Fact number 15, one line that runs the world's clocks. Not every fact here comes down to size, though. Some come down to position, and this one quietly makes Britain the reference point for the entire planet's clocks. The prime meridian, 0 degrees longitude, is the line every time zone on Earth is measured against, and it runs directly through Greenwich in southeast London. Stand on it, and you're standing exactly where the eastern and western hemispheres officially divide. For all its size, the US has no equivalent, no single line of longitude running through American soil carries that kind of global authority. Fact number 16, 50 versus 4. Physical geography is only half the story. The other half is how each country organizes itself on paper. The United States is divided into 50 individual states, each with its own government, laws, and identity, all bound together under one federal system. The UK is made up of just 4 constituent countries, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, each with its own distinct culture and, in several cases, its own devolved parliament. 50 pieces against 4. Same basic idea, very different scale. Fact number 17, how many clocks do you need? Geography doesn't just shape land, it shapes time. The continental United States spans 4 standard time zones, Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific. Add Alaska and Hawaii, and that climbs to 6. The UK runs on a single time zone for the entire country, Greenwich Mean Time in winter, British Summer Time in summer. Whether you're in the far north of Scotland or the south coast of England, everyone's watching the same clock. Fact number 18, counties on a different scale. Local government follows the same pattern, just smaller. The United States is divided into more than 3,000 counties across its 50 states, some, out in the rural west, cover more ground than entire small countries. England alone, just one of the UK's 4 nations, has 48 ceremonial counties. Same basic concept of local administration, playing out at 2 very different scales. Fact number 19, protecting the wild. Conservation is another place where both countries agree on the concept but not the execution. The United States has 63 official national parks, from the geysers of Yellowstone to the towering sequoias of California, protecting some of the country's most undeveloped land. The UK has 15 national parks, 10 in England, 3 in Wales, 2 in Scotland, and none yet in Northern Ireland. But British national parks work differently under the law. They're often still farmed, lived in landscapes, protected for their character rather than left untouched. Same name. A genuinely different philosophy. Fact number 20, the place names that break your tongue. Not every fact here is about scale or policy. Some are just fun to say, or, in this case, nearly impossible to. In Massachusetts, there's a lake whose official name, Shargagajojmanshogagagchubunagungumog, runs to 45 letters. In Wales, there's a village whose full name, Llanfairpwlgwynjolgojrichwyrndrobolantisilio, stretches to 58 letters, the longest place name in the UK, and one of the longest one-word place names anywhere in the world. Locals, sensibly, just call it Llanfairpwll. Fact number 21, how old is your capital? History draws just as sharp a line as geography. Washington, D.C. wasn't a city that grew naturally. It was deliberately planned and built on undeveloped, swampy land starting in 1791, designed from scratch to be the new nation's capital. London's story runs the opposite way. It began as Londinium, founded by the Romans nearly 2,000 years ago, and has functioned as a major settlement, and eventually a capital, ever since. One capital was engineered on a blank map. The other has simply never stopped being a city. Fact number 22, the dead center of each country. Even the exact middle of each country has its own small story. Depending on how you calculate a geographic center, different methods can land on slightly different points. By the commonly used method, the center of the contiguous United States sits near the small town of Lebanon, Kansas, marked with a modest stone monument in open farmland. Britain's center point is a little quirkier, near the hamlet of Dunsop Bridge in Lancashire, marked not with a monument, but with an ordinary red British telephone box, installed there specifically to mark the middle of the country. Fact number 23, the closest you can get to another country. And then geography does something bizarre. In the middle of the Bering Strait, Alaska's little Diomede Island sits just 3.8 kilometers, about 2.4 miles, from Russia's big Diomede Island. The international date line runs directly between them. The islands are barely a few kilometers apart, yet their calendar dates can be up to 21 hours apart, which is how they picked up the nicknames Tomorrow Island and Yesterday Isle. Britain's closest brush with another country is far gentler, the Strait of Dover, separating England from France by just 33 kilometers at its narrowest point, a gap now bridged underground by the Channel Tunnel. Fact number 24, when the ground shakes. Underneath the surface, the two countries behave very differently too. The U.S. sits on major fault lines, most famously the San Andreas Fault in California, and records thousands of measurable earthquakes every year, alongside real volcanic hazards across the West and Alaska. The UK is one of the more geologically calm places on Earth. Small tremors happen occasionally, but anything strong enough to actually feel is rare enough to make national news. Fact number 25, the language question. One last fact, and it's more recent than most people realize. For most of its history, the United States had no federally designated official language. English was simply the language everyone used, by custom rather than by law. That changed on March 1, 2025, when a presidential executive order formally designated English as the official language of the United States for the first time. Worth noting, an executive order isn't the same as an act of Congress. It directs how federal agencies operate, rather than rewriting U.S. law outright. The UK, meanwhile, has always treated English as its de facto national language, while also giving Welsh official co-status within Wales, where road signs, government documents, and railway announcements often appear in both languages side by side. So, after all 25 of these, who actually comes out ahead in a geography matchup between the US and the UK? That's probably the wrong question. America wins on raw scale, bigger, taller, longer, with more time zones than you can count on two hands. But Britain keeps closing the gap in the details, a coastline that nearly matches America's despite being 40 times smaller, a village name that could win a spelling bee on its own, and the one line of longitude the entire planet sets its clocks by. Geography isn't really a competition. It's proof that even two countries this familiar still have secrets left, if you know where on the map to look. If one of these 25 facts caught you off guard, leave a comment and tell us which one. I'll be reading them. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this is just the first chapter. Next time, we're taking the same US versus UK format into food, history, and everyday life, and it gets stranger from there. And if you learned something today, send this to the one friend who always thinks they know more geography than they actually do. See you in the next one.